Biggest upsets of the Michigan high school hockey season so far, off the radar teams and players that caught my eye recently, and we preview each of the 25 matchups at this weekend's Chelsea Showcase. So, a lot going on this week's episode. So, if you like the sounds of any of that, good. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube and let's talk some hockey, shall we? Okay, last week I put out a blog highlighting some of the biggest upsets to date this season. A one-win U of D team had recently beaten a ranked Trenton squad in an MIHL game earlier this month, actually, and it just kind of got me thinking about other big upsets that I knew of, and figured it'd be good to kind of call out, shout out some of those big performances throughout the season so far. You hear a lot of talk about parity in high school hockey, and I've heard a lot of people say this season in particular feels pretty wide open. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, I do think there's a bit of a window or like a competition range where teams fit in. And I mentioned in the blog that I believe my hockey rankings, kind of statewide rankings, are the best, most accurate rankings available in our sport. And I mean, I'm a little partial uh, to my top 25, obviously, which was updated this week as well. Be sure to head over to pdspicks.com and check that out. I'll get the top 25 published and updated this week. But I limit it, obviously, to just 25 teams. It'd be way too big of an undertaking to try and maintain a complete statewide rankings of all 128 teams. I rely on my hockey rankings pretty heavily, as I feel like it's kind of mathematical, statistical calculations. Seems to be as close to reality as possible when looking at the entire picture. And within those rankings, I figure most teams can compete with maybe the 20 or so teams ranked ahead of them and the 20 or so teams ranked below them, and be pretty competitive matchups there. With that in mind, I lost my train of thought here. Let me get back to where I was. Okay, so with all that in mind, you got like the 75th team in the state, as an example, may defeat the 58 ranked team in the state and probably should still be seen as a bit of an upset, but I wouldn't necessarily quantify it as like one of the biggest upsets in the state landscape, so to speak. So, what I wanted to look at was a team that defeated an opponent ranked outside of that 20 team window, and who was able to steal a win against a team ranked 25, 30, even 40 spots higher than them in the state rankings. Those to me would be the real shockers and the real head turners around the state. And in doing that research, I found 30 games where a team ranked more than 20 spots below their opponent came out victorious. There's been over 1,000 games so far this season, and only 30 instances. I felt like that narrowed it down quite a bit, and obviously paints a bit of a picture there too. It very much kind of confirms my thoughts regarding teams, that kind of competition window, and where they fit in as far as the statewide landscape is concerned. I took that, kind of used that as a bit of a metric benchmark for quantifying the upsets, and took the 10 largest differentials in the rankings and used that to kind of compile the blog on the website, which you can check out. The link to that blog is obviously in the description as well. I mentioned I want to call out a couple of these upsets. I'm not going to go through all of them. If you want to, like I said, check them out, feel free. I mentioned the U of D's 4-3 win over number 11 Trenton. They were separated by 59 spots in my hockey rankings last week, and that still wasn't the biggest upset of the season. That note currently belongs to Forest Hills Northeastern, who beat the 17th ranked Granville Bulldogs 3-2 back in December. They were separated by 63 spots on MHR. How about that? That was as recently as last week. I haven't checked this week's update. Those rankings get updated on Wednesdays. And today being Wednesday, didn't Uh, Obviously, double check on that this morning. So, a couple other things I wanted to note, that didn't make the blog. Wyandotte. I wrote about their 5-2 win over Divine Child, a team that ranked 31 spots ahead of them on MHR. The Bears also beat a Grand Rapids Christian team earlier in the season that ranked 57 spots higher than Wyandotte. So two huge upsets pulled off there by the Bears so far this season. And speaking of Grand Rapids Christian, they claim a pretty big upset of their own with a 5-3 win over Escanaba. Escanaba was 24 spots ahead of them in the rankings, and Escanaba, by MHR's metrics, is a top 25 team and should be considered in the fray there. I have them kind of on the fringe, just on the outside looking in, but nonetheless, Country Day is the only other program that has multiple instances of such an upset on their resume this season. The Yellow Jackets beat Eisenhower, which was 23 spots ahead of them in the rankings, and then also beat Lumen Christi, who was 29 spots ahead of them in the rankings. So, and check this out. I think this is probably where the perspective of parity comes in with high school hockey. Kalamazoo United upset rival Kalamazoo 3-2. Kalamazoo is 31 spots ahead of KU. Kalamazoo turned around and upset Cap City 3-1. Cap City is 31 spots ahead of Kalamazoo. Cap City turned around and upset Cranbrook 1-0. Cranbrook 26 spots ahead of Cap City. So I think if you do the transitive property there, Kalamazoo United is better than Cranbrook, right? But nonetheless, very cool to see that kind of ladder up the rankings when you start looking at some of the big upsets around the state this season. So anyway, I'll stop nerding out over that. If you want more on upsets and kind of highlighting some of the other big ones from this season, obviously head on over to pdspicks.com for more. Okay, last week, let me take a drink real quick. I'll try and pump the brakes here, slow down a little bit. Last week, I spent a good amount of time speed watching, like 25 or 30 different teams in the span of just a couple days. And I just wanted to get eyes on some teams' top guys, some of the leading scorers, some of the hot names that I knew about. And people have been saying, you got to watch this kid, you got to watch this kid. So I didn't spend a lot of time on each specific team or player. But I did get to a lot of different teams. So it was more about quantity viewing, not necessarily quality viewing, which was still all right. It was good to kind of be able to compare and contrast in real time certain players, certain teams, different styles, things like that. I got to see enough to draw some loose conclusions or know who's legit, who needs some work still, who's living up to the hype that I'm hearing and who's not. So I didn't watch any games in their entirety. Hell, I was lucky if I watched a full period. But kids, like no one else does that either. Scouts, like that's why you got to be on every single shift because you never know when someone's watching. And there's no guarantees they're going to come back and see you again. So every shift counts. And I get messages, hey, you got to watch this game. This is one of my best games. Or hey, watch this play that I made and this and that. It's like those are some of your best moments, but I want to see who you are consistently, not your best moments. And I'm also not going to judge you on your worst moments either. I want to be able to parachute in on any given game, on any given shift, and see who you are as a player. And I think that goes for a lot of scouts in the sport as well. So you can put together highlight reels and you can put together some of your best plays and things like that from the season. But ultimately, I think what a lot of us end up getting judged on is when a guy parachutes in out of nowhere and watches your third shift of a second period. And are you on or are you not? And if you're not, it's really easy to kind of cross that name off the list and move on. So anyways, like I said, kind of going through the way I did, I felt like I got like a really good view of a holistic view of certain players and things like that. So A couple takeaways on teams and players that I wanted to share, and I'll get into a lot more of these in detail as the season wears on. But Braeden McNamara is even better than I remember him from this fall in the MDHL. He was dominant, flying all over the ice in the one game that I kind of parachuted in on. Easily the best player in the game that I watched. And that's likely been the case in most games he's played in this season. It was good to see him keep his pace and performance at a high level despite being removed from that MDHL environment. And I talk about that a lot on the podcast here is you get guys playing in the MDHL, the MHA, and playing on some of these high level fall programs, playing with other top level high end kids, and they play a certain way. They play fast, they play intense, tough on pucks and things like that. And then they migrate back to their winter teams, and you fall back into maybe some bad habits and hanging on to pucks too long and forcing plays that you don't necessarily need to. I didn't see that from McNamara, and I didn't see that from some other guys. Connor Forster being another one. I'll get into him here in a second. I love to see guys playing in November, December, January, the same way that they were playing in September, October, November. So that really stood out to me. Obviously, McNamara there with Divine Child. I thought Connor Forster from Gabriel Richard was very similar. Maybe not quite as big or as fast and dominant necessarily as McNamara, but McNamara is setting a pretty high bar there too. So Forster was still solid, still attention grabbing. I like how involved he was in the play, and positionally was just really sound too. Some other ones here. St. Clair Shores Unified as a whole, I liked what I saw. I was very familiar with Zach Del Monte on the blue line. Obviously, he's a name I've known about for a while now, and you've heard me talk about him on the pod too. But I really liked Isaiah Pecora for them. He's just a little jitterbug, makes things happen in all three zones. You know, Caden Gersh and Gavin McKee are kind of leading the way offensively, and they're absolutely effective wingers. Don't get me wrong. I just thought Pecora was kind of the straw that stirred the drink for the other two, and made for a very effective trio there for SCS. So the Lakers there, just kind of as a whole, was a team that jumped out to me. You may think I'm crazy with this next one, just because he's playing for a sub 500 team, I think ranked outside the top 100 in the state. But Alexander Gorgievski, this kid out of Utica Unified, is kind of sick. Like, he's a second-year junior for Utica, back-to-back seasons of 13 or more goals. He's got 16 and 14 games this season. He's huge. He's hard to tell on film, but I'm going to guess he's like 6'4". Like, he's a big kid, skates great, handles pucks as good as, anyone. Snaps off some wristers too. I didn't see any of that production in the couple shifts that I watched, but I didn't need to see him score goals to know he was capable of doing it at a pretty high level. So if you don't know, now you know. I'm telling you, and this kid could play for just about anybody in the state, I think, and be effective in almost anyone's lineup. And I love coming across prospects like this. And obviously there's people in the area and the coaches and people in the Utica area that are familiar with this kid and have seen him play. This was just a first for me personally. There's a kid like that on every team I watch. I can't watch a game without singling out a kid and finding a spot for him on my kind of hypothetical roster as I'm mapping it out in my head. That to me was Gorgievski. I think if more people saw him and saw what I saw, they'd agree with that too. So he could play somewhere, which is exciting to me. So I'll be definitely keeping an eye on him and as things move forward and progress there. And obviously still just being a junior and having some time on his hands to still develop and grow. So, okay. There's a ton more, and I'll get into it later on this season. I'm still going to parachute in on a bunch more teams. I'm working on a bit of a project, and if you've been listening to the podcast, you may be able to pick up on it. I don't know. I teased it a little bit, I think, in the last episode, but My goal is to see every team in the state at least once, at least for a little bit. So may not be um, in a full period or a full capacity of a game or a showcase or anything like that. But I do want to get eyes on every team in the state if possible. So just see as many of the top guys as I can, and then by season's end, maybe we'll be able to have a little fun with what I find and what I see. So uh, stay tuned. More coming on that. So all right, let's wrap things up here with the Chelsea Showcase going on this weekend at the Arctic Coliseum. 25 teams in action, and despite only one of them being ranked currently in my top 25 this week, I think there's plenty of intrigue and interest in these matchups. A lot of evenly matched teams. I think there's some top level prospects. Some you should know about already, and others maybe you haven't heard of yet, but will soon. Kallen Ray, I think, is one of the best defensemen in the state. I think you could expect to see him in action in Chelsea this weekend for Traverse City West. I'm a big Alex Kozar. I'm on a big Alex Kozar kick right now. A kid out of Milford, similar to Gorgievski. I, I, Kozar, I think, would be a top six forward for probably any other team in the state too. Like he's a guy who could play for anyone in any lineup. Now he may not produce at the same clip that he is currently. He's got 35 goals in 16 games, but he's absolutely would be contributing. I think so. Who else here? Austin Scanlon, Nate Dell. I think that's a great duo for Lakeland. They're fun to watch. Adelar Hovis, Ben LaValle, Jeremy Schroeder, some of the highest scoring players in the state will be on hand at Chelsea. So let me talk some matchups here, and I'll kind of give you my picks for the upcoming weekend. I gotta let me where are we at here? There we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, you can follow along here if you're watching on YouTube. I'll do a little telestrator work for you here. And then obviously if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, I'll paint the best word picture I can as we're talking about matchups here. Okay, so Thursday, Showcase opens up with Fenton Linden taking on Ann Arbor Skyline. I haven't seen the Griffins yet this season, but remembering back to last season, I really liked guys like Trenton Rockman and Mason Wright. Even guys like Easton Lapham and Robbie Smeltzer resonated with me. Those guys still haven't scored a goal yet this season, but like I just remember the energy and effort from guys like that. It's a good group. I'm bummed that they're just 1-15-1 on the season. And as much as I'm pulling for them, I do think Skyline prevails here. So if I can get to my telestrator, we'll put a big circle there around the Eagles as you're watching at home. And this telestrating stuff's a lot harder than it looks. That is not a pretty circle, but we will keep moving on here. Carlson and Lance Cruz United play as the day unfolds. I saw Carlson earlier this season. That duo of Dietz and Witten is good for the Marauders. I think this could be a sneaky good matchup too. Carlson trending in one direction. They're winless in their last four, while Lance Cruz has won 6 of the last 7. So I think this is actually going to be a pretty close game, competitive game. But I'm going to take Logan Jarvie and LCU to pull it out here. I'll get back to my telestrator. We'll throw another circle up there for you. So, okay, we'll keep moving along here. Chelsea and Gabriel Richard. The new year has been good to the Bulldogs. They're a bit of a different team than the one that started the season back in November. But so is RGR. They've fought, scratched, and clawed through the season in some tough matchups. So give me the Pioneers here. We're going to keep hanging on the right side of the graphic here. Livonia United and Jackson United, I believe, close out action on Thursday night. Red Stallions are starting to play some of their better hockey as of late. Even in defeat, they're playing teams close and competitive. I think the benefits of playing in a really tough KLAA as well. I think that helps set Livonia apart in this particular matchup. So I'm actually going to take the Red Stallions here over Jackson United. And now I need to move. Let's slide on over to Friday here. We might have to work our way down the graphic a little bit, but you can still get a nice visual of matchups as we look at the Friday landscape. LCU, we just talked about them in a Thursday matchup there. They take on West Ottawa. Get out of school and get underway early Friday morning. That'll be a fun one there as you duck out of class and avoid that on a Friday. Hop into your weekend there a little early, maybe. I don't know. I think the Panthers are much better than their 7-11-1 record would suggest here. Leading scorer Carson Aarons, he's got a point in 11 of the last 13 games. Depth scoring for Woe as well. The Anderson brothers, Eli Bean. I think the Panthers get it done here. Give me Woe. How about that? Okay, Hudsonville and Lenawee. I called out the Eagles in a blog earlier this season as a team we should be talking about more. A young group that's doing it the right way, playing structured, playing disciplined, organized hockey. The wins are going to come. The success is going to come. Put your heads down and go to work. Good things will happen, I promise you. You know, they're just 5-10-0 this season. That's okay. It's a process. Get a win here at the showcase. Let's go. Fly, Eagles, fly. How about that? Oh, no. Telestrator issues. There we go. Fly, Eagles, fly. How about that? Okay, TC West and Livonia United. West has played not one, not two, but three highly rated teams in succession and played them all very tough. Offense just couldn't seem to get going. And I think Kallen Ray and Robert Counselor are able to open it up a bit here than they have in previous games, get some production and come away with a well-deserved win. There's a bit of a pattern going on here. I'm all teams on the right, now I'm all teams on the left. I don't know if that trend continues. I guess we'll see as the games unfold here throughout Friday. Divine Child, Rockford. Falcons got surprisingly thumped last week by Lumen Christie. Lumen's a good team, make no mistake, but I didn't see a 6-1 loss coming to DC at home, no less. They've had now, I think, 10 or 12 days off between games leading into this Rockford matchup. McNamara and company, I think, will be chomping at the bit a little bit to make up for that kind of disappointing performance last week. So I'm going to go with the Falcons here to get a big win over Rockford. And again, that's 4 in a row here on the left side. So we got a bit of a pattern going here. Saline and Lakeland in the next matchup. Top versus top may cancel each other out in this one. And it could turn into a bit of a dogfight. Saline has a bit of a track record, a history so far this season of making it tough on opponents and low-scoring affairs. I think Lakeland has a slight advantage when it comes to depth here. So the Hornets keep it to a 2-1, 3-2 type of game, but with some timely scoring, I'm going to take the Eagles here with a win over Saline. Next matchup here. Why don't I slide this graphic up here? There we go. That's good. Kingsford and Milford. Going to be a lot of playmakers on the ice in this one. Gavin Moore with points in 10 of the last 11 for the Flivers. Jake Crockford, Will Mervich. They're worth your attention as well. Kingsford's another team I've liked for a while. Just one or two more players added to the mix there would be a world of difference. But you work with what you got, right? A co-op with an enrollment of just over 1,000. So just resources are limited. But I like what they got. This game in particular, though, I don't think they match up well with the 1-2 combo of Kozar and Borges. So I think it's the Mustangs in this one here. Okay, Eisenhower and Petoskey up next. I said in the blog on pdspicks.com, I went from excited to apprehensive for Petoskey. They're 11-3-0 on the season. They've stockpiled a nice record. Get a good draw against a talented Eisenhower team, and you're coming in after being mercied by De La Salle last week. Ouch, that's tough. Northman could bounce back with a good performance. I'm hoping for it, obviously. But Ike is tough. Bodie Farr, Sawyer Hotchkiss. They got a couple defensemen I like too. Leighton Nayer, Weston Zederek. It's going to be tough sledding here. Give me the Eagles. A lot of Eagles in the showcase this weekend too. The Hudsonville, Eisenhower, Lakeland. You got a lot of birds at the showcase this weekend. Okay, Grand Haven and Troy. Troy was one of those teams I parachuted in on for a few shifts last week. They've enjoyed some success this season with a 12-6-0 record, but I think it's a pretty young bunch too. Despite that record, they rank 10 spots behind Grand Haven, who's 4-11-2 this season. I'm going to go with the favorite in this one. I guess they're technically the favorite, despite the big record discrepancy. Give me Grand Haven here with the W. Grosse Ile and Marysville, two teams I want to see more from. More? Marysville's 11-6-0. Grosse Ile has 15 wins this season, and I want more? I've watched both teams play, and both times just left wanting a little bit more. More structure, more 50-50 battles, more compete, more hunger. I don't know, maybe just a little more grit, a little more so there's more than one way to play and to win. I get that, and both are very different from what I look for, and maybe that's just a better way of putting it. It's different than my personal preference. But anyways, Marysville is 6-1-0 when both LaValle and Thick score goals. I think they both find the back of the net in this one, and Vikings prevail here. So give me Marysville for the first time. I think that's the first time I've picked Marysville for what it's worth. There we go. Telestrator. I'm a little all over the place here with this. Final matchup of Friday night here, Dexter and Carlson. I'll make it easy here. Dexter. I don't know why, other than I've been wrong about them all season. So I figured, what the hell? We'll change it up. We'll try something different here. They're on a 10-game heater heading into this weekend, so dreads all day. But this is another good test for them. So beware. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. This is going to be a good game. But I'll take the dreads. Another first for me. I don't know that I've picked in favor of the dreads here. So Marysville and Dexter both here, back-to-back games. Okay, we will move into Friday or Saturday, excuse me, as I work my way up the back across the graphic here. Fenton Linden takes on Hudsonville. I took the Ville in their first game. I'm taking them again here. How about that? They sweep the weekend at the Chelsea Showcase. Close game, but Eagles all the way. And this would be a big resume builder for that young group that's moving in the right direction. If you can sweep your way through an event like the Chelsea Showcase, that's a big accomplishment there. So got to see it, though. Got to see it. Get it done. Jackson United and Traverse City West, Kallen Ray. He doesn't have to get on the score sheet to dictate the outcome of a game like this one in particular. I think just an impressive defensive effort from him. And guys like Counselor and Charland and Mason can create enough offense without Ray to get it done in this matchup. So give me TC West. Oh, and I never highlighted Hudsonville here. Let me retroactively do that for you boys there. Okay, Lenawee and Kingsford. I finally get a matchup where I can pick Kingsford. You heard me rave about this group a minute ago. This feels like a good spot, a good matchup, a good opportunity for them. So I'm going to take the Flivers over Lenawee United here. Okay, Petoskey and Lakeland. The Eagles are kind of tough to score against. And Petoskey doesn't exactly fare well in low-scoring games. That's a concern for me in this matchup. I'm going to go Lakeland regardless of who gets the start in net here for the Eagles. So we'll go Lakeland. Rockford and Troy. I mentioned Troy being a bit of a younger team earlier, and I probably need to walk that back or rephrase it a little bit because they have 10 seniors on the team, but their top five scorers are all underclassmen, and I believe a sophomore is leading the team in scoring, in Kaiser Asensio there. So their biggest producers are young guys. Rockford, on the other hand, they've played every tough team there is to play in the OKC. Haven't won, but I think the value in that strength of schedule is the difference here. And I'm going to take Rockford over Troy United. Okay, let me slide this graphic up. We will close out Saturday's action. RGR and Marysville, toughest team Marysville will play all season. And Coach DeSanta has the luxury of last change to match up against the Vikings' top scoring line. You couple that with good goaltending in net, and the deck seems a little bit stacked in favor of the Pioneers. So give me RGR here with a win over Marysville. West Ottawa and Dexter, take the over. A lot of offense in this one. Dexter's got a habit of putting up big numbers. And while I think Woe can score a couple, I'm not sure they can score enough here. So I'm going to take the Dreads, another team. Whoa, what happened there with that? That was, let me see. I might try and can I undo that? I don't see an undo button. There we go. Let me try that again just because that was aggressive. That's a little better. Oh, okay. Anyways, we'll keep moving along here. Eisenhower and Saline take the under in this game. Between these two teams, there are 4 goalies with at least 6 starts under their belt so far this season. And both teams have a collective goals against average of around like 2.5 goals a game. I don't know who gets the start at either end for either team, but I don't know that it's going to matter either. I'm going to take Saline to gut out a close, low-scoring one here. They've fared pretty well in low-scoring games, so I'm going to take them to maybe steal one a little bit here from Eisenhower. Divine Child and Grand Haven. The Falcons should roll in this one. Should. But 3 of their losses this season have come at the hands of teams ranked below them on my hockey rankings. Grand Haven is 21 spots below DC last time I checked, and could make this game a little interesting, I think. I'm going to take the Falcons, but it's very cautiously taking the Birds here. Chelsea and Grosse Ile, we're getting close to the finales of the showcase. Red Devils have 5 guys that have reached double digits in goals so far this season. Team averages 6 goals scored per game. But senior Luke Webster and Chelsea, I mentioned, have turned a bit of a corner in the new year. Webster especially, he's got a .946 save percentage in his last 6 starts, a .185 goals against average in that span. I'm taking Chelsea, which I believe would give a 15-2 Grosse Ile bunch going 0-2 on the weekend. That'd be a stunner if it happened, and that's what we're looking at here anyways with PD's picks. So. Okay, last matchup here. I got Skyline and Milford. The Eagles, unfortunately, have next to nothing on the Hockey Hub. So there's not much I can say about individual players or performances this season, unfortunately. But although I'm not sure it's going to matter in this particular matchup because Alex Kozar and Craig Borges are enough to give the Mavs a pretty decisive win in this matchup, I think. So we're going to go with the Mavs to close out the Chelsea showcase there on Saturday night. Okay, can I do this? There we go. I'll go back to center here. Chelsea showcase this weekend. MIHL showcase next weekend. We'll have a lot leading up to that next week on that episode as well. And then after that, I feel like once we get past the MIHL showcase, I can kind of shift my focus and attention on the playoffs, regional matchups, favorites to win, bracketology, bracket busters, things like that. So a lot to get into with playoffs, and we will get into that in short order as things really start to heat up as we near the home stretch of the regular season. So be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Follow on Apple and Spotify if you're listening. Connect with me on social media if you want to talk about anything we discussed on the pod today. Skate hard, have fun. I'll see you at the rink soon.